to you.
Right, this is virtual leaders decision meeting. Present at this meeting we have a number of council officers as well as additional councillors, including I believe Councillor Varsha Palmer, Portfolio Holder for Environment, Councillor Paul Osborne and Councillor Marilyn Ashton. And before we proceed with the meeting, can I refer members and officers to the public protocols for holding virtual meetings, which are: members should ensure that they have their videos on at all times and microphones on mute unless speaking. Officers should switch off their videos and put microphones on mute until they are invited to speak. In the case of a technical problem, the meeting will adjourn until the issue is resolved, and the meeting is being audio and video recorded and will be available to watch on the council website.
Once burned.
So if we move to item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Graham Henson, Leader of the Council. And before we proceed, I would like to clarify that today's meeting relates to a leader's decision which is being taken on urgency grounds. Due to the leader's absence, the decision today will be taken by myself in my capacity of Deputy Leader of the Council. Can I have any declarations of interest from members present in the virtual meeting?
Keith, I have to declare the same thing as I declared at the TARSAP meeting. I have a non-pecuniary interest because I live in Borden Road, which is part of the West Harrow low traffic neighbourhood scheme.
Are there any others?
Fingers crossed for a short meeting.
I similarly have a non-pecuniary interest in that I am a ward member for Greenhill, and I believe one of the schemes is in Francis Road, which is in Greenhill. I can't hear anybody else disclosing pecuniary interests.
We also listen into the live feed as well to make sure.
Oh, that's sorry, 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Mara,
Towards the roads and Stanley Park.
I went out in my garden last night, my trousers and my shirt on. I've got a bit here, so you see it's red and hot. It's shirt and trousers.
I am a Stanley Park councillor. I'm also a Daphne's partner.
No, I wish you bloody did. She missed.
Sorry, Chair. Similarly, I'm non-pecuniary for the Marlborough one, Survivor Road and Princess Avenue.
But he plays around the corner from me, so it's like the same.
It's fine, I think that's all accounts for. If I move on to item 3, minutes. The minutes of the previous portfolio meeting on the 22nd of July 2020 are agreed and signed as an accurate record of the meeting. Item 4, petitions. None have been received. Item 5, public questions. 4 public questions have been received from members of the public as set out in the questions pack. 15 minutes will be allowed for asking and answering the questions. All 4 questioners have indicated that they will not be present at the meeting today to ask their questions in person, and with the exception of question number 4, have requested that they be provided with a written response following this meeting. With regards to question number 4, I have been asked to read the question on behalf of the questioner, Miss Veronica Chamberlain. Question from Miss Chamberlain reads as follows: bearing in mind that the proposed measures will come as a surprise to the majority of Harrow residents, how is the council planning to communicate the reasons for and benefits of these decisions? The answer is the decisions will be publicised via the available media channels and provide a full explanation to residents and businesses for the reason for the changes, to the programme following the public engagement exercises and the meeting of TARSAP. And as the questioner is not present, there is no supplementary questions. And that concludes the public questions section. Item 6, reports from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee or Subcommittee. None have been notified. Item 7 is the recommendation from the Traffic and Road Safety Advisory Panel meeting of the 10th of August 2020 concerning the Harrow Street Spaces Programme 2021. And before we move on to the discussion, I would like to invite Councillor Paul Osborne, who has requested to speak at this meeting. Councillor Osborne, you have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. It's hard to say much at this stage because obviously I don't know what you're minded to do, but I think on balance, the TARSAP committee considered all of these schemes in some degree of detail. And whilst I think we as a group aren't particularly happy with some of the schemes that are going forward, not least the amount of complaints we've had from residents in West Harrow, I think if you're minded to accept the TARSAP recommendations, then we're content with that. If we're on our hand or not, then we'll have to look at other options that are available to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite Councillor Varsha Palmer, the portfolio holder for Environment. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. Having listened to so many comments over the past few weeks, I just want to remind everyone that the Street Space Scheme is a government initiative led by the TfL. And one of the main objectives is the safety, health and well-being of the residents by delivering a safe environment to enable easing of the lockdown. However, looking at the current situation around us, this has never been more important. This is not about individuals or groups who want this or that. This is about you and your neighbours, you and your loved ones, you and your communities. This is about us collectively working together and looking out for each other. The virus has not gone away, and we don't know what is ahead of us in weeks and months to come. So I ask you all to work collectively with us to keep our borough safe and virus-free as we can by keeping the 2-metre distance, wearing our face masks unless there is a health reason not to, disposing of them safely, and looking out for each other as every life matters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Varsha. And I will now proceed to consider the recommendations from the Traffic and Road Safety Advisory Panel, which are set out in pages 11 and 12 of the published supplemental agenda. I believe somebody is going to put up the recommendations on the screen. I'll just give everybody a few minutes to read them.
I mean, these aren't the recommendations that are agreed by TARSAP. They're amended recommendations that are presumably put before you.
I'll come on to that in a minute.
Okay.
Just want everybody to read it first. Okay, I think if we can work through it now. I accept all the recommendations set out in the supplemental addendum, except for the following three, which I'm changing on the basis of information that has been received and representations that have been made since the TARSAP meeting. There are three, if we could scroll up to the top. The recommendations: number one, the impact of the health crisis on travel and public transport due to social distancing requirements and the measures proposed by the government and the Mayor of London to address the crisis be noted. Item two, the pedestrian space schemes implemented as shown in the revised Appendix A, Table 1 be noted. For clarity, at the TARSAP meeting, there were four public space meeting places that were deleted, which is PS 07 Stretfield Road, PS 08 Honeypot Lane, PS 10 Kenton Road, and PS 11 Kenton Lane, which were taken out for further consideration. And based on what Councillor Palmer has said, I am convinced that the health aspects of these far outweigh the other impacts, and that we should allow our local residents the ability to self-distance at 2 meters and not have the infrastructure in such a way that they are not able to do so. So those four will all be prioritised for review as set out in Recommendation A, and such review to be conducted by the 15th of September 2020 following further footfall survey results. So in essence, that means that all of the pedestrian space schemes will be implemented, including the four that TARSAP asked not to be included. If we are by the 15th of September 2020, by virtue of the footfall survey results show that the impact on businesses has been affected, then we will take another review as to whether we will continue after the 15th of September 2020. It's also my view that by having increased pavement widths, we will attract more people to particular shopping precincts, and therefore I cannot see that there will be any effect on the shopping footfall. Paul, you've got your hand up.
I mean, this was discussed at considerable length at TARSAP and was subject to a deputation from one of the shopkeepers. To be clear, these schemes are already implemented and already in place. So we can see what the impact is. And we know the impact in these places is a massive decline in footfall, and some of these businesses now really struggling for survival. And that's why TARSAP, and it was cross-party, it was Labour councillors as well as Conservative councillors, took the view that these schemes should be withdrawn, as there was more than enough space for people, especially with the 1 metre plus guidelines, to adequately social distance. This is not new schemes that we put in, it's schemes that are there and are having a devastating effect on local businesses. And I'm really concerned if this goes on for another month of those shopkeepers having to deal with the lack of business that they get.
Well, I don't see where you got the evidence to say that there's a drastic loss of business, because we have done footfall figures since the TARSAP meeting, and it doesn't show that there's been any decrease in footfall either during the week or at weekends. Perhaps one of the officers could indicate the results that we got from the footfall survey.
Chair, if I may, later on, I'd like to speak, if that's all right with you.
Certainly.
Okay, Councillor Ferry, it's David Eaglesham speaking. What I can say is that we've done 2 sets of pedestrian footfall surveys. One was done in June, so some months ago, and one was done very recently, only a few weeks ago. And what the figures show is that, broadly speaking, there hasn't been very much change in the footfall. In some cases, there's been a few increases. And so the impact of the pedestrian space measures doesn't seem to have had a dramatic impact on footfall based on those surveys.
Right, Marilyn, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I'm grateful. Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, I completely understand where Varsha is coming from on this. We all want to keep people safe, and I think that we can all agree that. The problem with this is that what you've got here is you've got the people who are running the businesses, the people who know how they're doing and what kind of level of shopping and trade that they're doing. And they're all saying, all of them, without exception, that they are struggling now that people can't park and get out and pop in. These are not places where you get a kind of window shopping type of precinct. These are places where they're quite niche, some of these establishments, and where people go along there specifically for a reason. Now, I think, and I completely understand where you're coming from as well, Chairman, but I think that the TARSAP panel, of which I'm not a member, were very wise, actually, to have these proposals deleted, because they have listened to the businesses there, and there is no question that they're not making it up, that there is a problem. Now, if we're going to go behind that and say that the businesses are not being frank and honest with us around the kind of takings that have fallen as a result of these measures, then I think that's very wrong. And I also think it's a mistake to go behind the correct cross-party decision of the TARSAP panel. I mean, Chairman, you're obviously going to do what you're going to do, but I can't help myself but to warn you that you're making a mistake and you're going to upset a lot of people who are really struggling, and I shall hold you personally accountable if they go under. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we put the resolutions back up again? Right, the third recommendation, or the second change, is that the low traffic neighbourhood scheme shown in the revised Appendix A, Table 2, for implementation on an experimental basis by the end of September 2020, A, be approved with the exception of LTN 05 Green Lane area, Stanmore, LTN 07 Byron Road area, Wealdstone, LTN 08 Dennis Lane area, Stanmore, LTN 09 Princess Drive area, Stanmore, and LTN 02 Pinnerview area, Headstone South, was recommended by TARSAP for deletion, but in consultation with the ward members and officers, I've decided to retain that, but that the low traffic neighbourhood scheme LTN02, Pinnerview area, Headstone South, be subject to extensive consultation with ward councillors, members of the TARSAP committee, local residents, and after that consultation, if an agreeable scheme can be found, then the corporate director of community, following consultation with the portfolio holder for environment, be delegated authority to determine whether the scheme should or should not be implemented. And I'm not too sure the following paragraph just repeats what it says above.
I think you're correct, Chairman. I think those next 3 lines need to be deleted. They were just what was in the original recommendation.
Yeah. If we could just scroll down a bit further. Well, recommendation 4 says that the school street schemes, as shown in the revised Appendix A Table 3, for implementation on an experimental basis by the end of September 2020 be approved. Number 5, the cycling schemes SCO1, SCO3 and SCO9 implemented as shown in the revised Appendix A Table 4 be noted. And 6, for the George V Avenue Hatch End Cycle Scheme SC10, the current scheme is not taken forward as the amendments proposed by TARSAP do not fulfil the required outcomes of the scheme. And that recommendation was that the Hatch End, if you like, end of the scheme be implemented, but the Headstone North End be not implemented. I don't believe that in order to have a comprehensive scheme, it should be done in 2 phases like that. And I am proposing that the cycle scheme in this area be subject to further consultation with local stakeholders to include ward councillors, local residents, local businesses, local schools, and members of the TARSAP panel. And that subject to funding being identified, any future scheme be determined by the portfolio holder for environment following consideration by TARSAP. Number 7, the making of experimental traffic orders where required to implement the necessary traffic and parking restrictions for the schemes for a minimum of 6 months be approved. Item 8, the corporate director of community, following consultation with the portfolio holder for environment, be delegated authority to undertake a regular review of the schemes and to provide a monthly update to members of the Traffic and Road Safety Advisory Panel and ward councillors to determine whether any amendments were required for the schemes, including any experimental scheme. And 9, a report be submitted to the Traffic and Road Safety Advisory Panel following the initial 6 months of operation of the schemes to feed back the results of the consultation and the quality impact assessments, and to consider whether schemes should be ended, extended up to a maximum of 18 months or made permanent. I've also got another recommendation, 10, which I would like to agree to a review of the procedure for proposing, consulting and determining highway, pedestrian and cycling schemes, and such a review to be presented to the next meeting of TARSAP. So in the event that there's no other urgent business and there are no other comments.
Are you agreeing with that? Because there's two things. One, I do worry that the ward councillors who came and spoke at the TARSAP committee haven't been involved in the discussion to put these pedestrian schemes back in, and on at this meeting, I note. And look, it's your colleagues, and obviously you'll have to deal with them, but I know Councillor Shah in particular was not happy at all about the scheme in Queensbury. I'm also not comfortable with the recommendation, final bit of the recommendation on the cycle scheme in George V Avenue, because it's my view that that scheme could potentially be a key decision, given that it'll affect more than one ward, and therefore it can't be made by a portfolio holder. It would have to, were it to be a key decision, have to go to Cabinet or to the leader, as it's doing now. And I have to say, we're going to be considering our position on all of these now that you've decided off your own bat to go against the cross-party decision of the TARSAP panel. And we were prepared to accept schemes that we didn't like because we thought it had been properly considered. But if you're going to go back on that and start changing things without properly consulting ward councillors and without giving residents the opportunity on an amendment that hasn't been put on the website, so no one had any chance to prepare for it, then we'll consider our position and look to call this in, which will delay all the schemes, which I don't really want to do. But you're putting us into a position where we have to consider that.
Well, you'll have to take whatever measures you think are fit, but these have the 4 schemes have been discussed with ward councillors. I feel that there's certainly the one on George V Avenue didn't receive the consideration that it should have done, and I can't believe that implementing half a scheme would be good for anybody. And that's why I want more public consultation on the George V Avenue and the Pinnerview schemes.
I'm fine with the Pinnerview and George V Avenue schemes. I don't have a problem with what you're suggesting. The only thing I'm saying with the George V scheme is it might need to be a cabinet level decision rather than a portfolio level decision, depending on how big the scheme turns out to be. That's all I'm saying on that. I understand you might not want to implement the whole scheme, or say half the scheme, and that's fine with me. I'm just worried that these businesses that we took the TARSAP panel decided to take these pedestrian measure schemes away from are really suffering. And as portfolio holder responsible for business, I would have thought you'd give special attention to that, rather than figures that aren't published, and we have not seen the figures for footfall, or we haven't had any opportunity before this meeting to review them or to discuss them with local businesses and local residents. I think it's been, the whole process has been poor governance from beginning to end, poor consultation from beginning to end, and this just reinforces my view that this has been a very badly managed programme.
Right. Well, thank you for your views. In the absence of any other representation and the absence of any other urgent business, I therefore close the meeting.